new information that's coming out on one of Mueller's central questions in the Russia probe. What did actually go down inside the famous 2016 Trump Tower meeting? The Guardian reporting tonight that the Russian billionaire who organized it formed an American shell company 1 month beforehand. Now, Mueller already knows that, we would think, and it's coming after there was developments about another central figure in the meeting who's doing talking. Mueller reportedly pumping Paul Manafort now for information explicitly on Roger Stone. They are former business partners, and CNN reports Manafort has been to Mueller's office at least 9 times in the past 4 weeks alone for 6-hour intel sessions. Manafort and Stone have this long history. Their firm was Black, Manafort, Stone, and Kelly. In that photo there that you've seen before probably, that's Manafort and Stone. They were also a groomsman at Stone's wedding. They are close friends, to be sure. Now, Stone says he's highly confident Manafort is aware of no wrongdoing on his part in the 2016 campaign, but he notes it's possible Mueller could charge him, and earlier this year he acknowledged the possibility of indictment.
So you are concerned about a potential indictment?
Concern would be too strong. I acknowledge that it's a possibility.
I'm joined by Nick Ackerman, a former assistant Watergate special prosecutor, and former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance back with us. Nick, if this is the quiet period for Mueller, one wonders what the louder period could look like after Election Day. What does it tell you that the Manafort meetings are going this long and that they involve Roger Stone, who, we should say on your behalf, full disclosure, you also interviewed back in the day when you were a Nixon prosecutor?
That's correct. No, it says to me, this is obviously what you'd expect Mueller to be doing. The first person you'd want to be talking to Manafort about is Roger Stone. They go back, as you mentioned, to 1980 as business partners. They have a long-time relationship. It was Roger Stone that recommended to Donald Trump that he take on Manafort as his campaign manager or bring him into the campaign in March of 2016, who later became Donald Trump's campaign manager. Roger Stone is right in the middle of everything. It all starts in the spring of 2016, or May of 2015, rather, when basically they go through this big charade of Roger Stone being fired from the Trump campaign. Roger Stone claims he quit, but basically he goes undercover to work on the Trump campaign. And we know that during that period of time, up through the spring of 2016, he is talking to people, saying to them that he has had conversations with Julian Assange and others, that he knows that the Russians have hacked into the Democratic National Committee and that they've got the Hillary Clinton emails and other emails and documents from the Democratic National Committee. He's right in the middle of talking to Guccifer 2.0, who is the Russian operative that releases these emails. Early on in June of 2016, shortly after the Trump Tower meeting. He's also talking, and he claims to a number of people that he was talking to Julian Assange, even though later on he totally denies that. So if you're looking for the key weak spot in terms of who is the connection that makes the conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, it's got to be Roger Stone. And the person who obviously should know the most about what Roger Stone was doing is Paul Manafort, his longtime friend and the campaign manager during the time when Roger Stone had all of these conversations.
And Joyce, this goes, I think, to the limits of the movie analogies for understanding investigations, although we use them and we love them. But the notion that you're always going up the chain is a little bit simplistic, because Stone is probably roughly lateral to Manafort, but Mueller seems to think that it's worth getting all this information, as Nick says.
You know, Nick, I think, is right that Stone has to be a primary focus of Mueller's conversations with Manafort. But the way I've always viewed, to the extent that there might be a conspiracy here, how it would work, is it would be more like the hub of a wheel, with different spokes going out from the hub to different parts on the wheel. So the connection with with Roger Stone to Julian Assange might be one of those spokes, and there could be other portions and other people involved in separate conspiracies who don't know each other, but all part of the effort to collude with Russia for the benefit of the campaign.
Both of you, please stay with me. We're going to go even deeper, because before Manafort was talking to Mueller, He was talking to the filmmakers at the documentary Get Me Roger Stone, which would prove to be more than narrative interest. This is verging on evidence. Take a look at him revealing how Stone recommended him to, yes, Donald Trump in that critical role as campaign chair.
Did Roger recommend you for the job?
Roger was one of the 2 or 3 people who strongly recommended me, yes. Even after Roger stopped being the principal political advisor to Trump, he continued to be a very important advisor and is to this day.
And is to this day. Morgan Pammy directed that documentary and worked with Stone for more than 5 years. Morgan, let's pick up on what Manafort says right there. It reinforces Nick Ackerman's theory of the case, that whether or not you were technically on payroll, this is a man who was intimately bound up at the candidate level, which became, of course, the president level, as an advisor.
No, that's absolutely true, Ari. There's a part in our movie when Manafort is hired and Roger tells a reporter that he's back in the saddle with the Trump campaign. Roger put Manafort into the campaign. He was his inside man. It enabled him to have a great deal of influence in the center of the campaign. And ironically, even though this was Manafort's opportunity to get back on the national stage in an extremely important role, it ultimately has proven to be his undoing because of the guilty pleas that have been brought against him subsequently.
So when you were interviewing Paul Manafort at that time, what did you glean that applies today? Did you see any fissures in their relationship? Did you imagine that Manafort would be in a position to turn on Stone or would have negative information about him? Up to this juncture, to be clear about the evidence, we know that Paul Manafort has done more criminal activity than Roger, who appears to be of interest, but we can't say anything more than that.
I think that Roger is probably reeling from this latest revelation about Manafort cooperating with Mueller in regards to him. This will be a tremendous personal betrayal. Roger became friends with Manafort when he was in his teens, and Manafort and he were involved in Connecticut politics together. As you saw in that picture from our movie, when Roger is 22, Manafort is a groomsman at his wedding, and when he's 24, Manafort manages his successful campaign to become national chairman of the Young Republicans. So he and Roger and Manafort go back as far as they possibly can go, and he's absolutely an extraordinarily significant person in Roger's life. And if he's dropping a dime on Roger, that will be both painful for him on a personal level and, of course, on a legal level as well.
And Nick Ackerman, Sam Nunberg was someone who worked directly for Roger, although they did have a falling out. He provided his testimony, as I think many people remember. And here's what he said about all this in terms of his expectations after speaking to Mueller's investigators on the beat.
When Roger is indicted, unfortunately, I don't support it. You'll have some...
You expect him to be indicted?
Yes, I do. And you're going to have some broad charge that he was part of a conspiracy to defraud America, then backed up with a bunch of financial charges.
Nick?
It's not going to be backed up by a bunch of financial charges. It's going to be backed up by the testimony of Paul Manafort, probably corroborated by his assistant, Rick Gates, maybe even corroborated by Trump's lawyer, Cohen, and further corroborated by the former national security advisor. So either way, I think what you're going to look at here is a case that could basically rest on a number of different witnesses, be corroborated by documents. If you looked at that last indictment of the Russians relating to the conspiracy to break into the Democratic National Committee computer and then stage the release of the stolen documents and emails, Roger Stone's conversations with Guccifer 2.0 are specifically referenced as overt acts in that conspiracy. I think you're going to see a whole series of testimony and documents supporting an indictment on Roger Stone.
And Morgan, have you turned over any of your video materials or evidence to any authorities?
No. I mean, I think that our film speaks for itself, and you know, I'm not sure how this will all play out, and certainly it seems like it's getting closer and closer to Roger every day, and I'm sure that this is deeply concerning for Roger to be such a clear focal point of the probe at this point.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.